evening, everyone. Township of Edison Zoning Board of Adjustment regular meeting is now in session. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975 has been provided by the annual notice published in the Home News and Tribune on December 28, 2018, and has been posted in the main lobby of the municipal complex on January 4, 2019. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One announcement. Guys, ready to clap? We have Cassandra, the new mommy, back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, with that, do the roll call, please.
You got it. Mr. Ayotte?
Here.
Ms. Shaw?
Present.
Mr. Bignell?
Here.
Mr. Carr?
He's excused.
Okay. Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. Siddhartha?
Here.
Mr. Taglinetti?
Present.
Mr. Mansouri?
Present.
Mr. Shmuel?
Here.
Mr. Kamba?
Here.
Vice Chair Skibar?
Here.
And Chairwoman Federick.
Here. Thank you, Cassandra.
Yep.
Okay, now after the roll call, you want to call the first case, please?
Yes.
Oh, wait,
Oh.
before that, let me just make my usual announcement.
Okay.
As usual, 10 o'clock, we'll see where we are, and then we'll decide how much further we will go, as has been the procedure of this board during my chairmanship here and prior to me. Okay, Cassandra, go ahead, please.
Case number Z26, 2019, Kapil Varshni, 27 Monmouth Avenue, Edison, New Jersey, 08820, Section 3743. Bulk variance sought to allow the construction of a 6-foot chain link or semi-privacy fence along both front yard property lines on a corner lot. Required setback is 12.5 feet, proposed is 0 feet. Affected property is located in the RB zone, designated as Block 663, Lot Number 25, on the Edison Township Tax Map. All paperwork is in order.
Mr. Varshni, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
Okay, and would you please state your full name for the record?
Kapil Varshne.
Okay, good evening, sir. Please keep the microphone close to you and speak into it loudly, please. Tell us what you would like to do and why, please.
I would like to put 6 feet fences on my property line. There is a Lincoln Highway right behind my house, and it's very busy highway, and I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and I like to just fence my property so that she can play there, and the highway is like quite dangerous. There is always an accident.
The front of the property, the fence is going to start at the end of the house, correct?
End of the house, yes.
Before the steps, okay.
Yes.
Does the board have any questions of the applicant?
Sir, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sir, have
Mr.
you
Conley?
received the Township Zoning Report Board Review Letter?
Yes,
And are you willing to comply with it?
yes. I do not have any tree to remove the fences.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does the board have any other questions of the applicant? None? Okay, there being none, I'll go out to the public. Anyone within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Anyone outside of 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? There being none, I'll close the case and go to the board, please.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve. The fence will not obstruct the view from the corner and will provide security for the applicant's daughter.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Cassandra, please.
Mr. Taglinetti?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Siddhartha?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Mansouri?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Shmuel?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Kamba?
Yes on the motion.
Vice Chair Skibar?
Yes on the motion.
And Chairwoman Federick.
Yes on the motion. Okay, thank you, sir. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you so much.
Case number Z34, 2019, Rohit Kataria, 65 Wintergreen Avenue East, Edison, New Jersey, 08820. Section 366317, bulk variance sought to construct an all-season room on existing concrete pad on the rear of the existing single-family dwelling. Rear yard setback is 30 feet. Proposed is 21 feet. Affected property is located in the UR zone, falling under the RBB requirements based on location. designated as block number 1225, lot number 6 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Mr. Kataria, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Will do.
Okay. And state your full name for the record.
Rohit Kataria.
Good evening, Mr. Katari. Would you please tell the board what you would like to do and why?
So we're proposing to build an all-season room in the back, and the fact that not been able to use the backyard for anything, just because it's cold and not built up anyways.
Yeah, you want
and
to
then-
speak a little louder?
And the fact that,
closer?
yeah, I want to make sure we can leverage the backyard and use it all season.
Is it going, I was out there and I noticed that you have a patio there. It's not going to be any bigger than the existing patio, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Does the board have any questions of the applicant?
Madam Chair, sir, did you receive the township engineer's report?
Yes, I did,
And
yes.
you will comply?
And yes, I would. There's no trees or anything, and there's an opening.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions of the board? Okay, there being none, I'll go out to the public. Anyone within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Anyone outside of 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? There's being none, I'll close the case and go to the board, please.
Madam Chair, I will make a motion to approve. I believe that this is a de minimis request. The applicant will abide by the Township Zoning Report Board Review Letter, and he will abide by any conditions set by this board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Taglianetti?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Siddhartha?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Mansouri?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Shmuel?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Kamba?
Yes on the motion.
Vice Chair Skibar?
Yes on the motion.
And Chairwoman Federick.
Yes on the motion. Okay, thank you, sir. Have a good
Thank you.
evening.
Case number Z40, 2019, Hugh Ming Cheng, 3 Brookville Road, Edison, New Jersey, 08817, Section 3713-1 and 3763-17. Use and bulk variances sought to expand the existing non-conforming two-family home by adding 2 outdoor staircases. Use of a two-family home is not permitted. Proposed is an expansion of this non-conforming home. Rear yard setback required is 30 feet. Proposed is 7.2 feet, where 9.7 is existing. Affected property is located in the RB zone, designated as Block 1121, Lot Number 4 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Good evening, Mr. Shire.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Bernard Shire with the firm of Convery and Shire. I'm representing Hugh Ming Chen, who is the owner of 3 Brookville Road in the RB zone, Block 1121, Lot 4. This is a pre-existing non-conforming two-family house which was built in 1952 and has always been taxed as a two-family home. My client's purpose of coming before the board is to get approval to add 2 exterior staircases to the upstairs apartment. The reason for this is when the home was built, and I can only assume that the regulations were a lot different then, the only entrance to the upstairs apartment is a single stairway from the downstairs residence, and that would never be permitted under today's rules and regulations for home building. So this will, we are going to eliminate that stairway and add the 2 external staircases, which is a very small addition to the house, to allow a much safer situation with 2 independent means of ingress and egress. The only variance created is for a rear yard because of the way the house is oriented. One of the stairways will be in a rear yard. It presently exists. It was built with a 9.7-foot rear yard. We are only proposing to change that by 2.5 feet to 7.2 feet on the one stairway. I have our engineer, Mr. Kin, here, who designed the plan, and our architect, Mr. Wong, who designed the renovations. If there are any preliminary questions, I'll be happy to address them. If not, I would be calling my first witness.
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Shire at this point? Miss, okay, no, Mr. Shire, we're okay, so you can
All
go
right,
ahead, please.
Thank you. I should add, I also do have my client, Ms. Cheng, here, if there are any questions for her by the board.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Shire, yes.
Was the house originally built as a single family?
No, it was built as a
Built as a
two-family. It's
two-family?
always been taxed as a two-family, and it was purchased as a two-family.
Mr. Shire, what's upstairs?
It's an apartment.
Okay, and you're not doing anything to the upstairs, correct?
We're doing some renovations to the upstairs. We're realigning some of the rooms. We're eliminating that staircase, and we're creating a new study.
Okay, we're not adding any bedrooms,
No, there'll be
correct?
there are two existing bedrooms now. There will be two bedrooms when the job is done.
Okay, fine. Okay. Yes, Mr. Taglinetti?
If you're not going to divide the upstairs into two apartments, why two staircases?
Because we want to have two means, you're supposed to have two means of ingress and egress to a residential dwelling. And right now, there's only one, which I guess they let you build in 1952, but they would never let you build today. And this will be a much safer, and frankly, if the house were being built today, you would have to have those two means of ingress and egress.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Cool.
Mr. Ayotte, you look a little...
Yeah, this application came to me about a month ago, I think, and it was denied because the applicant originally wanted to construct a third bedroom on the second floor. So now you say you're going to make that third bedroom, instead of calling it a bedroom, you're calling it now a study. But you're still leaving...
Based on my advice, I said, don't add a third bedroom.
Correct.
You know,
That's-
they're going to leave that room a study as opposed to a bedroom.
So why are they leaving an egress window in a study room?
An
The
egress.
plans show an egress window. That's normally for a bedroom. So at no point, at any later date, will this be converted into a
This will not-
bedroom?
That can be a
If we can
condition
make that as a
of any
condition.
resolution. It is not going to be a bedroom.
Okay.
That was my advice to my client, and she agreed with me.
But the house is...
Because
still-
of your
Correct. And the house has been there for 50, 60 years?
1952 is
With,
67, 70 years.
and it was served well by one means of egress down the center of the stairs, correct? Down the center of the
Yes.
house.
Fortunately, there was never a fire.
There's a lot of homes in Edison that have one means of egress, two-family
that's-
homes out of the center.
Probably not
They're
a good
not,
idea.
they're not required to be brought up to today's code, those kids.
That's correct if it's pre-existing, but it's not a great idea.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Shire, you want to go ahead, please?
I call Mr. Kin, engineer.
Good evening,
Hold
gentlemen.
on. Could you please raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, all is true. Thank you.
And would you please state your full name for the record?
My name is Kin, James Kin. I'm a professional engineer.
Can we have some of your qualifications, please, sir?
Sure. I've been registered professional engineer in New Jersey for more than 10 years. My personal have engineering experience more than 20 years. And the also has been the expert witness in engineering in several municipalities such as Verona, Totowa, Hopewell, and etc.
Okay, fine, thank you. We'll accept your qualifications.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kin, you were hired by Ms. Cheng, the applicant, to prepare the engineering plan for the renovations to the house in question?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you actually visit the premises and examine them and prepare a plan that was submitted to the board?
Yes, I have.
Right. From an engineering standpoint, what are the changes that are proposed for this two-family home?
The only thing proposed change in the plan on the exterior side is a two staircase on each side of the house.
And these staircases are for ingress and egress to the upstairs apartment?
That's correct.
Presently, are there two means of ingress and egress to that apartment?
No, existing condition is only one staircase from downstairs to upstairs, and that's about it.
And to your knowledge, the inside staircase is being removed, is that correct?
That's correct.
Approximately, now because of the way the property is oriented, there is a rear yard which would normally be a side yard. Is that correct, under most circumstances?
Yes, that's correct.
And that requires a 30-foot setback?
Yes, that's correct, basically on the township ordinance.
All right, and the existing, the way the house was built, there was a 9.7-foot side yard,
That's correct.
and that's what it is presently, correct?
That's correct.
And the addition of that staircase will create a side yard of 7.2 feet, so a change of about 2.5 feet.
You are correct.
Will there be any other changes external other than those two staircases?
No, nothing I have aware of. That's the only change I know.
I have no other questions of Mr. Kim.
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Kim? Yes, Mr. Betty.
Sir, on your drawing, in the middle, you have a section that says section at deck. Where is that section taken?
Section deck?
In the drawing, A2, there's a detail in the middle that says section at deck.
You talk about inside the house?
I don't know. I don't see where it's marked. It seems like an exterior section.
All right.
It seems to be pretty wide apart, but I don't know where this section is taken.
Could you identify on the drawing? I don't know which part you talk about.
It's, if you're looking at the drawing, there's something that says general plumbing notes, and if
Oh,
you
that's
look to-
for the-
if you look to the left of that, it says section at deck.
You're looking for the architect drawing, aren't you?
This is an architectural drawing, A2.
Sorry, I'm only qualified to do for the engineering drawing for the site plan. So that I should leave to the architect for addressing your question.
The architect is here to
All right.
Oh,
to
okay.
answer your question.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't, is that shown on the engineering plan that was submitted? I don't see,
Yeah, it's coming with the showing engine plan is the site plan. That's only one of one. That's for the layout of the house, the bay, and also the variance setback, something like that. Right.
Okay, it was a little bit deceiving. Does the board have any other questions of Mr. Kim? None? Any questions? Yes, Mr.
Just to
Skibar?
clarify, does the removal of the staircase downstairs have any impact on the FAR?
No,
No?
no. However, it is a structural change, and you're not permitted to do any structural changes to a non-conforming use. Two-family is a non-conforming, non-permitted use in the RB zone.
Okay, any other questions of Mr. Kim? None? Mr. Shire?
I'd call Mr. Wong, the architect.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
Mr. Wong, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you
Yes, I
God?
do.
And would you please state your full name for the record?
Sean Chen Wang, SHEAN-CHANGWANG.
Okay. Sir, can you give us some of your qualifications, please, for the record?
I'm a master's degree in architecture and been practice 20 years license, total 30 years experience, and I also hold the state construction official license as well.
Okay, fine, thank you. We'll accept your qualifications.
Mr. Wong, you were hired by Ms. Cheng to prepare the architectural plans for this remodeling?
Yes,
And in doing so, did you prepare the plans that were submitted to this board?
correct.
And did you visit the site and
Yes, many
obviously
times.
look at everything before
Yep.
you prepared the plan?
Yep.
Could you please describe briefly what the architectural changes are going to be, other than the staircase, which had already been described by Mr. Kim?
Okay, the intent is because as we already know that it's one single stair from second floor to the first floor. So we want to see with a fire rated separation between first and second floor. And the second floor need two means of egress. And it's an open stair, so we don't increase any FAR. and that's a design intent. As far as the gentleman, your question on A2,
Right.
that deck is platform, because when the stair coming out, you need to have a landing, and I call it deck. And then from that platform, you're coming down. So that's what section coming from.
Well, the deck, the platform that you've shown is 3'6".
Yes.
When I measure the number of boards here, it's almost 8 feet. Is this section out of scale, or is it like a typical section?
No, that's a typical section. And then the 8 feet is coming down to the steps.
Okay.
It's not a deck. It's a platform, but I call it a deck because there's a special section required from a building code standpoint of view.
Right.
That you need to have the flashings because of the snow are coming into the house. So that's a deck standard sections for the platform. I should be named as a platform instead of deck.
Okay, and I just have a follow-up question. In that detail that you have on the section at deck, where you are bolting the ledger to the existing house?
Yeah. It's attached to the existing house.
Right,
It's an outside platform.
You seem to be attaching to the sill plates. Is that a good idea? If you look at your detail, you have some bolts going into the sill plates instead of the boards.
It's a ledge board.
You can take it-
attach it.
okay. All right, please take a look at that. Typically, you connect either to the wall or to the boards, but not to the sill plates, not to the double sill plates.
Okay, I'll look at it.
take a look
Yeah,
at that.
went to the building department and I will look at it.
All right,
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Wang? Yes, Mr. Shimura.
This is currently a two-family house. How do you get upstairs from the first floor? You have to walk through,
It's from that two egress stair up.
but these are new stairs that you're proposing.
Yes.
Currently, how do you get upstairs?
Currently, they use a center stair, go up. So that's, according to the code requirement, the stairs have to be fully fire rated. And currently, it's an open stair. That's why it's still very dangerous now. If a
So currently, the tenant on the second floor has to enter through the
Correct.
first floor's living room
Yes,
to go up to the second floor.
correct. So that's very inconvenience. And if, let's say, two family,
It enters through the living room, or it's a separate common means of egress?
no separate common egress, it's living room.
The first,
It's strange. When you go into the living room and go into the stair, you go to the second floor. That's
so the
no,
first floor tenant's watching TV, and the second floor tenant comes in past the TV?
Yes.
And goes upstairs?
yes. And the stair
There's
is
no
not,
hallway, there's no corridor?
no. It's strange. Just a regular single family home, but it's two family.
Mr.
And then we
Kavanaugh.
pay two family
So,
tax.
so
Mr.
it's
Kavanaugh.
not a non-conforming use, it's an illegal use, correct? Am I right? Because you're having two families.
No,
Because it's
it's
existing,
legal.
it
It's
is a
existing.
non-conforming. At the time it was built, it was permitted. Because of the zone changes and regulations since that time, it has become a non-conforming.
Mr. Ayotte?
Yes.
They're walking through another residence
Mm-hmm.
to get to the second residence.
Correct.
There's no
Correct,
fire
Phil.
damping between any of that.
We cannot require them to bring that up to today's code. We cannot require them. I understand what you're saying, I agree with you.
So
That's why we want to
But they're
make it
not
better.
required to comply. Homes that are built in the 1900s and 1920s are not required to be brought up to today's code, unless they do major
They may have been built then, but as I look at the side elevation,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like there's a raised dormer in between. So they took the roof, which was a gable roof, and raised it to make the second story. Am I correct, sir?
That was built before.
But you've been to the house.
Yes, yes.
And you typically haven't built houses like these with dormers on them. So that is post the original construction.
Yes.
So if they did something post the original construction, are they in violation?
If they did it without permits, yes. If they did any structural changes without permits post, from the time it was built.
If the applicant is contending the house has always been this way, then we should somehow do a search and find out if in fact there were permits. comments.
I would have no objection to anyone searching the records, but as my client purchased it as a two-family house, it was built in 1952. According to the tax records, it's a
No, we know it's a
two-family house.
two-family. No, we're not questioning two-family. We're questioning the common means of egress out of the center. We're not
Oh, that's,
questioning
well,
the
that's,
use of the
I've
two-family.
never seen, you know, I'm sure you would never
never
see
seen
that
it.
today, that's
No,
for
I've never
sure.
seen it.
But our purpose is to bring it into compliance with the safety regulations.
Okay, is there any other questions of Mr. Wang at this point? None? Okay, Mr. Shire?
Mr. Wong?
Thank you.
If you wanted to build the house today, each apartment would have to have two separate means of ingress and egress, correct?
Yeah, and it had to be total separation.
And that is based upon the Uniform Commercial Code and every other building code I've ever heard of. Is that true?
Correct.
If you were building it today.
Yes.
Yes.
We're talking about a structure that has existed before the advent of the code,
Yeah,
1977.
exactly.
Before the adoption of
That's
UCC.
why it exists this way.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Mansouri?
Excuse me. On the second floor, what is the height of from the floor of the second floor to the ceiling?
710.
710.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Schmull?
If you already have two set of egress, being one is the window and one is the stairs, why do we need a second set of stairs?
It requires two means of egress, two-way out. We
You
don't
already
use
have
it.
You have the window,
We
egress
don't.
window.
Well, normal fire escapes.
Sorry?
In normal situation, the fire escapes. We prefer more safety, so use a stair to egress. And you don't want to use a window. There's a part of a.
No, each unit is only required to have
Bedroom.
its own individual means of egress. You're not required on that second floor unit to have two means of egress. You have one coming down the center, and if you have a staircase on the outside.
Oh, that was before.
If you have a staircase on the outside, that would serve the means of egress for the upstairs unit. They're not required to have two. We're talking about the 2018 IRC, International Residential Code, correct?
Yep.
Okay. They're not required.
It's just recently adopted. It's 2015.
2015 was the same way.
Madam
There's no change.
Chair?
Shire, yes.
Based on what Mr. Ayotte said, my client would be perfectly happy not to build the second staircase, which violates the setback. I mean, we think it's safer, but if the
Okay.
board would prefer we eliminate that variance, we can.
Okay. Ms. Shaw, do you have any comment to that?
If the applicant is agreeable to it, and if the board wishes to approve this application, they can certainly make that a condition.
Since it's in the notice, okay. Any other questions of Mr. Wang? None? Okay, Mr. Shire?
I have nothing further unless the board has
Okay.
questions of my client.
Does the board have any questions of Mr. Shire's client? Yes, Mr. Mansouri?
Is there currently a tenant living in the second floor?
Is there
sorry,
a
I didn't
tenant
hear.
in the is there a tenant currently living in the second floor?
No.
Mr. Taglenetti?
One more question. The window means of egress 30 by 46, is that a single hung or a double hung?
The double hung.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, there being none, I'll go out. Thank you, Mr. Wang.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. There being none, I'll go out to the public. Anyone within 200 feet of the property wanting to appear, sir?
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your full name for the record, providing us with your address.
My name is Patel Ketan, and I'm the owner of 1 Parkerson Road, Edison, NJ 08817.
Okay, what would you like to tell us, sir?
The way the house that we are talking about is built diagonally, and it's very close to my backyard, and the 2 staircases will take away privacy of my little daughter who's playing in the backyard. Plus, the stairways will be visible from the street, therefore impacting the value of the property of the house.
Okay, you're looking at your house, you're looking at this house, you're to the right or to the left?
I'm to the right.
Right, okay. Okay, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, fine, great. Thank you so much, we appreciate it. Anyone else within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Now is the time.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And would you please state your full name for the record, providing us with your address?
My name is Joseph Walshko, 16 Sturgis Road.
Sir, what would you like to tell us?
I'm sorry.
What would you like to tell us?
Pardon?
What would you like to tell
What would you like to say? You want to speak
I'm
into the
an
microphone.
original owner in this development, and the people that used to live there that added on to the second story did it as a mother-daughter situation. That to me was agreeable with the township and everything else. Now making it into a two-family house under the conditions and the size of the house that it is, I don't agree with, and I object to it.
Okay, fine, thank you, sir. That it?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Anyone outside of 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Okay, there being none, I'll close the case and go to the board, please.
Madam Chair, before we make a motion, I guess, can we have a little discussion on the removal of the second staircase? Sure. Is anyone opposed or in favor of maintaining two sets of stairs?
My concern is how to remove these stairs, the existing stairs that seem to be structural, or at least it surrounds, and how it's going to be done without affecting the structure above it. I don't think anyone's addressed that.
I'm sorry, how the stairs are going to be removed without,
Affecting the structure above it.
it's going to have to be approved by the building department, so that we have an architect, and we will have a professional builder apply for a building permit.
Okay, I'm just going to add something to make sure we're all on the same page. If so, because your client said she would, we're talking about not putting on the extra staircase.
Correct.
But we're talking about taking off the old one and just replacing it with a new one. Is that what we're doing?
No, taking out the inside staircase,
Case.
which Mr. Ayotte described, and just having the one staircase that
Case.
does not create a
Variance,
variance, and
and-
eliminating the outside staircase that does create a rear yard
And
variance.
have the escape window?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
So-
Okay, and as you said, the building department would have to
Sure.
approve that
Yeah,
before.
absolutely.
Okay, fine.
So the center staircase is staying?
The
No,
center
center staircase is
being
being
removed.
removed.
moved,
Okay.
okay? All right, is everybody understanding of all of that? Okay, so
Well-
then, Mr.
All
Skibar.
right, just to clarify, this is a permissible two-family home as it is right now.
Correct.
Yes,
As it
sir.
has
This
been.
is in compliance with the town ordinance and not in violation of any laws.
No, sir.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so I will go to the board for a motion, please.
Rose, can I ask a question on this?
Yeah.
So we are voting on a motion to approve?
Well, we'll see what the motion's going to be.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Mr. Skibar.
Um, I will make a motion to approve, provided that this home remains a two-family home. There is no external structural changes to increase the, I guess, the current footprint of the house or any other additional structures being added to the house outside of the two staircases.
Both staircases, or you're talking about one staircase only going in, correct?
One staircase.
Okay.
And, there will, again, it will remain two bedrooms upstairs, and we were, I'm sorry, with the window?
the window escape is still going to be there, so it'll be the existing staircase and the window escape. And the inner staircase is coming out, and there'll be no extra bedroom upstairs.
Okay.
Okay. Do I have,
Before you
Yes.
do that, just to clarify, so the staircase in the motion that you're talking about removing is the one that creates the variance?
correct,
So you're leaving the one that does not create the variance?
correct. Okay? Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Cassandra, please.
Mr. Taglianetti?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Siddhartha?
No to the motion.
Mr. Mansouri?
If I may, am I allowed to ask just one
Sure.
question? Does the applicant need to resubmit new drawings based on the approval conditions? Or is that not necessary?
What was the question?
Does the applicant have to resubmit new drawings because of the fact that we're asking them to take off the
Oh,
one
we will have
staircase?
to submit them to the building
Building
department, which
department.
will have to be approved by the
And the zoning.
township zoning officer and planner.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm. Yes on the motion.
Mr. Shmuel?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Kamba?
No on the motion.
Vice Chair Skibar?
Yes on the motion.
Chairwoman Federick?
Yes on the motion. Okay, thank you, Mr. Shire.
Thank you very
Have a
much. Good to
evening.
see you all.
Yep, nice to see you again.
Will you need a transcript?
Pardon me?
Yes.
Will you need a transcript?
Do we need a transcript?
Okay.
Please, thank you. No, not yet. Yeah. Yeah. Cassandra, please.
Case number Z5, 2018, Outfront Media. This is just for supplementation of facts to support the resolution.
Okay, I'll turn this over to our attorney, Ms. Shaw, and we have one person, Mr. Skibar, who's going to recuse himself.
Madam Chair, I'll recuse myself.
Ms. Shaw.
Okay, so this is a remand order from Judge Hurley as to a matter that's on appeal. It's an application that was presented and reconsidered by the board, and there were members of the board that did vote on it and make the motion. There are other members sitting here today who did not vote on that motion, so if they could just remove themselves that did not vote on this particular application. Yes? Is everyone on the board sitting here, did they all vote on it, Cassandra?
Okay. Did Mr. Betty vote on it, Cassandra?
Can we just confirm?
Go ahead. Well, this was on July, yeah. Well, I have so many different ones here. Could it have been February 26, 2019? The last transcript. Yes. February 20.
Just to confirm the names?
Yep. Okay, we got it.
So the court would like this board to supplement the facts that are in the resolution as to the support for the motion that was made on that date. So we're going to have to, and I asked everyone to review the transcript. You can only base it on what was already presented and based upon the findings that the board made when it reconsidered this application. Okay?
Okay. After having heard that, we will now make a motion. Mr. Kamba?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve this application as a single-face, single-pole digital billboard. The applicant has met all of the negative and positive criteria. I believe that a digital billboard is well-suited for this site. I base my motion for approval on the following conditions. There will be no co-location on the site. The applicant agrees that the site will be well-maintained. With regard to the timing, each message on the billboard shall be displayed for a minimum of 5 minutes. While the board recognizes that the New Jersey Department of Transportation regulations for outdoor advertising, NJAC 16:41C, allows for a minimum display time of 8 seconds, This board believes that this timing guidance provided by the state is aggressive, given the traffic conditions along the Route 1 corridor in Edison. This board is comprised of Edison residents, most of whom travel along the Route 1 corridor daily. And we're residents, and we're familiar with the traffic conditions along this corridor. As a result, any display minimum less than 5 minutes would pose a safety hazard to motorists and pedestrians. This timing is also based on a prior approval for a digital billboard along the Route 1 corridor in Edison with the display minimum of 5 minutes. This point was also made clear in the Bignell report dated June 21st, 2018, which states, "The board on previous applications has only allowed for a message change every 5 minutes." There was also concern expressed by residents during the public portion of the hearing of August 21st, 2018, with regard to the requested 8-second display minimum. Accordingly, any approval by this board shall be based upon the requirement that each message shall be displayed for a minimum of 5 minutes. This board believes the testimony presented to establish an 8-second display time was insufficient. The Kona Vision testimony was insufficient and did not consider traffic conditions, signalization, or pedestrians. With regard to anything that is not mentioned above, this motion will incorporate all the testimony of the applicant, attorneys, planners, and members of the board, as well as the incorporation of all the conditions and what is to be done or not done at the site as was satisfied to.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Cassandra, please.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Mansouri?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Shmuel?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Kamba?
Yes on the motion.
And Chairwoman Federick.
Yes on the motion. Thank you. Ms. Aram, are you ready? Do you need to set up, or are we okay? Okay. Cassandra, read the next case, please.
Case number Z46, 2017. Care 1 is a continuation.
Good evening, Ms. Aram.
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Donna Aram from Kiesa Shahinian and John Tomasi representing Care 1 at Birchwood, LLC. At the conclusion of our last appearance, Mr. Gazarovski was in the process of cross-examining our planner. Our planner had a long-standing COA hearing tonight, so he could not be here tonight. My other witnesses are here for Mr. Gazarovski to cross-examine if he would like to.
I know he's here somewhere. Mr. Ayotte? Yes, ma'am. Can you go find Mr. Gazarovski outside, please? Okay, everyone, we're back in session. Ms. Aram, we're back. You're up.
Fine, I'm fine.
Good evening, Ms. Aram, again.
Thank you. I placed my appearance on the record. When we were here last, Mr. Gazarovski was in the process of cross-examining Mr. Phillips. I've explained Mr. Phillips's absence this evening. However, all of my other witnesses are here. Mr. Gazarovski has completed his cross-examination of our engineer, Michael Fowler, and our architect, Michael Pomerico. So that's where we are.
Okay. Mr. Gazarovski.
Yes. Madam Chairwoman, thank you and good evening to everyone. I first want to thank the board for extending me the courtesy for my inability to be here at the last hearing, and I appreciate that. I did read a copy of the transcript from the last hearing, and it is my understanding that Mr. Phillips gave testimony, which was quite extensive, but he is not available for cross-examination this evening. Is that correct, Ms. Chairman? Yes. Okay. And then I believe the other person who gave testimony, whom I have not yet cross-examined, was the traffic consultant for Ms. Arab, and he's going to be presented for cross-examination.
He's here.
That's fine. The question then, and I discussed this very briefly with Ms. Shah, I think that in light of the fact that the planner is not here for testimony, that I think that my request would be that at that particular point, the hearing closed for the evening. When we come back, I will cross-examine Mr. Phillips, and I have two witnesses who will testify, one being my traffic consultant, who is Alexander Litwarny, and the second being my planner, who is Peter Steck.
Ms. Shaw, do you have any input on that?
That's, my expectation is that you would continue with the planner, but I don't know how many witnesses do you need to still cross-examine tonight? Because this has been going on for some time, and so we would like to know. I know you've got the traffic expert to cross-examine. Who else do you need to cross-examine this evening?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your comment with regard to my witnesses. You want to proceed forward with them this evening?
My preference would be to continue. However, before we do that, I need to first find out how many witnesses you still need to cross-examine this evening.
I want to cross-examine the traffic consultant who is here, and I certainly intend to cross-examine the planner.
Are those the only two witnesses left that you need to cross-examine and complete the planner's cross-examination and cross-examine the traffic expert? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Aram, do you have a position on this?
As far as Mr.
As far as proceeding with the cross-examination of the traffic expert, continuing with the planner at a later date, because my preference is, considering it's only 7:55, and this may be a little out of order, but I would prefer you have your witnesses put on because this case otherwise is going to linger.
I think that Mr. Gazarovski, if he finishes his cross early, he can present his traffic expert this evening. He doesn't need to complete Mr. Phillips's cross in order to present his traffic expert because we've already presented our direct, and he will have cross-examined our traffic expert. So if there's time left, perhaps he can do that, but we have to see where we are.
I would presume with the traffic expert, I would presume that you probably will have time left to at least continue with your expert. And then the question is whether or not you wish to proceed with your planning expert or wait to do that. I would prefer you present your testimony because, again, this case has simply lingered on our docket for far too long.
And you have to admit, the public has been very, very patient. The board has been very, very patient, but we really have to move this along.
So you want me to proceed with both my traffic expert as well as my planner this evening?
That would be my preference, and then at that point, if Ms. Aram is going to bring back her planning expert for the next meeting, you'll continue with his cross-examination, and then I would presume, Ms. Aram, you'll have some rebuttal?
If, depending upon who Mr. Gazarovski presents, then I might want to cross-examine them. However, I will want time to prepare cross-examination. I'm not going to do it on the fly.
Right, so the cross-examination and possible rebuttal would be at the next meeting. My question is, I want everyone to understand when we will reach the public, because we have not yet even reached the public.
I would like to know that, too.
So that's what I'm trying to get at.
It
So
all depends on-
procedurally, at this juncture, we're looking at cross-examination of the traffic expert, of the applicant's traffic expert. You're going to present your two experts. Then we're going to, at the next meeting, continue with cross-examination of the applicant's planner and complete that. Then Ms. Aram will cross-examine your two experts and present any rebuttal.
And that assumes that Mr. Gazarovski completes his direct...
Microphone.
Sorry. It assumes Mr. Gazarovski completes his direct of his both witnesses tonight, which he may or may not do. We just don't know.
Let's put it this way. I'm politely going to ask Mr. Gazarovski, when he asks his questions, not to take 5 minutes, to please come to the point and ask a direct question, because we really want to move this on. And this board and myself and the public would really appreciate that.
I understand
So
that.
having said that, can we please move on, please?
Thank you.
So just to be clear, the expectation is at the next meeting, there will still be some cross from both sides, possible rebuttal. We hope to go out to the public at the next meeting, but
We don't
that's
know.
not known. Okay. And that next meeting would be, Cassandra?
October 29th.
Okay.
Are all the previously marked
excuse me.
exhibits here?
Yeah, excuse me. Mr. Taglianetti, do you have a question?
you have
Madam
those?
Chair, several meetings ago and earlier than that, We had questions that were presented to the architect and several others of the applicants. Those questions haven't been answered, and I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle here.
Okay.
I'd like to have some time to ask those questions later on this evening.
Okay, fine. Just remind me, and more than you will be able to. Yes, Mr. Gazarovski?
Yeah, have the previously marked exhibits present here this evening? The site plan that was on a board?
Yeah, we have our exhibits.
Could I have that, could I have that placed on
The site plan?
Yeah.
We would have the board's copies. I'm reluctant to have those turned over to anyone, obviously, if you need to review them, but, I mean, you should have a set at this stage. Do we not have a set?
I don't want to have them turned over to me. I just want to have it placed on the easel so I can refer to it in my cross-examination.
Okay. Ms. Aram?
Ms. Shaw, I need to address a correspondence that Mr. Gazarovski forwarded to you. I don't know if he forwarded it to the board. However, I do have to.
It has not yet been forwarded to the board. It is not yet a part of the board's packet. They do not have it, and until Mr. Gazarovski presents the board, because he only submitted it to myself, but it needs to be submitted to the secretary for the zoning board so that the board members may also have a copy of the letter. If you want to wait to address it until that is done, or if he wishes to present it and provide it to the board now, that's fine too.
What do you want to do?
I want to present, well, I'll present it to
Please
the board.
into
and
the
you can-
microphone, please.
I'm sorry. Not in accordance with, but I commented upon this to Ms. Shaw. I purposefully did not send it to the board. I only sent it to the board attorney as well as a courtesy to you. I want to have it marked for identification, and I don't know whether Ms. Aram objects to it or not. And
I guess we'll have to wait till you present your case and we find out if that is something you wish to present, and then, Ms. Aram, you can respond to it. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, let's move along, please.
Okay, I would like to...
Microphone, please. There's one that you can, right there, and you can walk around with it too, if you have to.
I would like to cross-examine the applicant's traffic consultant who testified, I believe, at the last hearing.
Zario is here. He's already been sworn.
I'm going to re-swear him simply
Okay.
because, just for, to keep
He can
the
stand
record
at the
clear.
podium.
He can stand at the podium. I believe that microphone may work as well. Do we have any additional microphones? Because Ms. Aram may need one as well.
Now, do we have another one beside that one? We need that one plus another one.
If we need to. Sir, while we're getting that sorted, why don't we have you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And would you please state your full name for the record again?
Certainly, Dan. Last name is Disario, D-I-S-A-R-I-O.
Okay, Mr. Gazarovski.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and Mr. Desario. My name is Ron Gazarovski. I'm an attorney with offices in Red Bank, New Jersey, and I, in fact, represent several individuals who are both residents of the Township of Edison and property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. Now, I take it that with regard to your traffic testimony, and I did refer to it in reading the transcript, all of your calculations and all of your reports with regard to site distances and the like were predicated, were they not, upon the presently existing right-of-way of the highway frontage in question?
Objection. This question requests testimony that was not within his direct testimony.
Whether it's in his direct testimony or not, he referred to the site plan that was prepared by the engineer, and that's part of his calculations to determine floor area ratio and things of that nature.
I'm going to reiterate my objection. There will be no testimony given on cross that was not within the scope of my witness's direct testimony.
Okay, this is not a court of law. We do relax the rules of evidence. If your expert cannot respond to it or can simply state that's outside of his scope, that would be his response, but I think he should have a response.
I respectfully disagree, because even though the evidence rules are relaxed, we can't throw them out. And this has been an ongoing contested application for 1 year, and with organized opposition, and there has to be some sort of boundaries. And I cannot allow my witness to stand on a slippery slope. So unless the question is eliciting information that was testified on direct, then my witness will not answer it, with all due respect.
And the board can consider it as such. Mr. Gazarovski?
Right. Let me draw your attention first, Mr. Tesarno, to the exhibit, which is a plan prepared by Langen Engineering, and I believe it has been marked but it purports to be a project prepared for Care 1. Michael J. Fowler was the professional engineer, Langen Engineering the company. It's called a site plan. The date of it is November the 10th of 2017, and it's drawing number CS101. Now, prior to your coming here this evening, did you have the opportunity to examine that site plan?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in reading through your testimony, you gave specific testimony with regard to site distances, did you not?
I did not.
It's not in your oral testimony or in your report?
No.
Wasn't part of your testimony dealing with the safety of the ingress and egress to the subject site and egressing as well off of Inman Avenue?
No.
Well, let me ask you this question then. When you prepared your analysis for the parking, did you take into consideration what the existing survey would show as to property which is owned by the applicant or under contract to the applicant? Did you take into consideration of the fact that this particular application has not yet been submitted to the Middlesex County Planning Board?
I don't know the status of an application to the county, so my answer to your question is no.
Well, did you have occasion to read the review report of Mr. Bignell that was done prior to the start of this application?
I did review that report, but it was a very long time ago.
Okay. Well, you knew you were going to be testifying this evening, did you not? How long ago did you review the report?
A long time ago.
Oh, I know it's a long time ago. Was it years, months?
Objection. Let's get to the point. He said
Let's
he
get
did
to
not,
the
he
point.
did not review the letter for several years.
I do not expect to have a boxing match here this evening. I expect everybody to be courteous, and one person speaking at a time. And if Mr. Desario can answer the questions, fine. And if he can't, he will say he has no response, and we'll leave it at that, Mr. Garabowski.
Okay.
I remind you, he's a traffic expert. Mr. Garabowski?
Prior to your coming here this evening, at any time prior to the start of this application, did you have occasion to review the review letter prepared by Bignell Planning Consultants dated September the 4th of the year 2018?
Objection. That was already asked and answered.
Right.
Mr. Gazarovski, again, I'm going to ask you one question, not 5 times. And she's correct, he answered the question.
I think it would be easier.
Mr. Gazarovski, I believe his answer was a long time ago. Now, if you want to question him as to how long that was, you can explore that for a minute or two, but this is, let's not be redundant. Let's
Madam Chair Lady, I don't want to complicate this. I asked him a simple question, whether or not...
I'm sorry, but he did give you a simple answer saying a long time ago, so let's move on,
Well, I want to
please.
determine, respectfully, I want to determine the letter we're speaking of. It's the letter which is dated September the 4th of 2018. And I simply want to ask him whether or not, at what time, if he can recall, subsequent to that date, he read the letter.
questions asked.
And I don't recollect exactly when I reviewed that letter.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
fine.
Desario.
Now, when you gave testimony, you spoke specifically about the parking spaces in question, which are as a part of the site, did you not?
Relative to parking supply, yes.
No. Did you give testimony with regard to cars both ingressing and egressing out of the subject site?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you did that and you presented that testimony, did you discuss site distances at all?
No.
Okay. Now, when you prepared were you a part of the planning with regard to the layout of the project, the preparation of the parking areas, as well as the location of the driveways, both ingressing and egressing the site?
No.
You had nothing to do with that at all?
Correct.
Let me ask you this. You are a traffic engineer, are you not?
Yes.
And I take it you are a licensed professional engineer of the state of New Jersey?
As well as other states.
Pardon me?
As well as other states.
Very good. Now, is it part of your job as a traffic consultant? Now, if you don't want to give testimony with regard to that, I could understand that. But isn't it part of your job as a traffic engineer to determine whether or not traffic can safely enter and egress the site in question?
Objection. I'm objecting because the scope of the work that Mr. Desario performed was already established at the beginning when he gave his credentials.
So in response, you're saying that Mr. Desario cannot respond to that question.
I'll let him respond if he wants to.
Mr. Desario?
Could you rephrase the question, please?
Surely. You are familiar with the site plan that was prepared by Langen Engineering, are you not?
Yes.
And I don't know the answer to this, but are you also associated with Langen Engineering in some capacity?
Yes.
Now, were you part of the process of determining the site layout and the safety of the ingress and egress onto this site?
No.
Okay. So is it your testimony then that you have voiced no opinion, nor do you have any opinion as a traffic consultant, that the site itself can be safely ingressed and egressed?
As it relates to traffic operations, I've presented that testimony prior.
It's a simple question, and I think it deserves a simple answer.
He got his answer.
Pardon me?
You have your answer.
What? Could you repeat the answer, please?
You can present our entire testimony again if you like, but it's a waste of time.
This is cross-examination.
Ms. Aram, he's entitled to explore what he believes was testified to or not, and then Mr. Desario can respond accordingly. But there was not, as far as I can recollect, with that question, I did not hear a response.
Mr. Desario, please.
Yes, read it back, please.
I'm sorry?
I'd like the court reporter to read the question.
Oh, okay, fine.
Mr. Gazarovski's last question.
Okay, so is it your testimony that you have voiced no opinion, nor do you have any opinion as a traffic consultant that the site itself can have, wait a minute, I lost it. That the site itself can be safely ingressed and egressed?
And my response was, I testified to the operations of the proposed facility as it relates to traffic.
I don't think that's responsive to the question.
I think the board can figure that out, Mr. Gazarovski.
Pardon me?
I believe the board can figure that out, Mr. Gazarovski. Why don't you continue?
Okay. Now, you stated that, I believe, that you are familiar with the exhibit which is presently before the board that contains the site plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, are you aware of the fact that with regard to the subject property, when we look, excuse me one second. That when we look to the properties which are located to the west on Inman Avenue, as well as the properties which are located to the east, which are my client's properties on Inman Avenue, prior site plans or prior approvals have called for the widening of Inman Avenue, wherein the right-of-way, as it perhaps existed then, was expanded in a northerly direction. Are you aware of that?
Not intimately, no, I'm not.
Pardon me?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that the plan presently as shown as prepared by Langland reflects the fact that the subject property, when designed and laid out, which you were a part of, does not count for the possible expansion of that right-of-way if and when it's required by the Middlesex County Planning Board? Did you give any consideration whatever to that?
I did not testify to anything regarding right-of-way along the site frontage. And I think you might be confusing me with the site engineer, because your questions thus far have been to the site engineer and that testimony, not to my testimony.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you rely upon the documentation that was provided to you by the site engineer in preparing your traffic analysis?
Yes.
Okay. So you then saw, did you not, the plan that was prepared by Langen Engineer, which reflects the fact that the area immediately in front of the subject property, and more particularly the lots in question, does not provide for a possible expansion of the right-of-way of that property, since Inman Avenue is in fact a county road.
I don't know if it provides for that or not. However, if and when we file a application with the county, if the county so chooses to require additional right-of-way, the applicant would have to comply with that request.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that if in fact an additional right-of-way is required by the county, that's going to impact the percentile of parking which is necessary on the site, because the site itself will be smaller?
I do not know that to be the case, no, sir.
Did you, in preparing your report and in preparing your analysis, did you give any consideration at all to the fact that the county may in fact request an increased right-of-way?
No, sir.
Okay. Would you agree with me that if in fact there is an increased right-of-way at the area of the ingress and egress on the westerly sideline of this property, that would in fact affect the appropriate or applicable site distances both to the east as well as to the west?
I do not know that, no.
I didn't ask you if you know it. I asked you if you gave any consideration to it.
You asked me if I agree with your assessment, and I said, no, I do not.
No, I'm not asking.
That's what your question was.
Let me read. Well, excuse my fumbling around, perhaps. My question to you is, did you give any consideration in preparing your analysis with regard to site distances and the like as to the possibility that as a result of the county planning board's review that the right-of-way on Inman Avenue would be pushed further to the north in front of your client's property?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that a portion of your client's property is in fact in the existing right-of-way of Inman Avenue?
No.
One last question. How much time did you spend with both the engineer in discussing Inman Avenue as well as reviewing the plan that was prepared by him?
Not much time.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Desario.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gazarovski, you're next, please.
Just so we're clear with regard to the protocol, I will have the opportunity at the next meeting to cross-examine Mr. Phillips, who is not here this evening. At the request of both the board attorney as well as the board chairman, While I don't agree with it, I will agree at this particular point in time to call my two witnesses, one being Alexander Litwarnia as my traffic consultant, and secondly, Mr. Peter Steck as my engineer. I'm sorry, planner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Go
Let me
ahead.
call first Mr. Litwarnia. Do we have an extra?
The microphone, yes.
It'll start feedback A if you have them next to each other.
We're really awake, Ed.
Hello, test 1, 2.
Don't bring some levity to this. Crazy.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And please state your full name for the record.
Alexander Litwarnia, Litwornia.
May we have some qualifications, please, sir?
Professional engineer and professional planner in the state of New Jersey, and professional engineer as well in other states, New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Florida.
Okay, fine, thank you. We'll accept your qualifications. Make sure you keep the microphone close to your mouth, please, while you're speaking into it.
Mr. Gazarovski, he's offered for which purpose? Because he said he was an engineer and planner, so which purpose are you presenting his testimony?
Mr. Litwarnia is being called specifically on this particular occasion as a traffic consultant or traffic engineer based upon his professional expertise and is being accepted on numerous occasions as a professional traffic consultant, both in courts of law as well as boards. So I would take it that your, Madam Shirley's
Sure.
acceptance of his credentials is
Correct.
sufficient.
May I be heard, please? I'm going to object to the presentation of this witness because he has not submitted a report. We've been here for almost a year, and I have no idea what he's going to testify to, and I'm entitled to know that. And there's been no report submitted.
Well, we're going to provide you with an opportunity to cross-examine him at the next meeting, so.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Litwarnia, you have been retained by me in this particular matter to give testimony before this board concerning the proposed application, were you not?
Yes.
And as a result of that, you're also being compensated for both your testimony and your presence here this evening.
Correct.
Now, have you had occasion to both examine the subject property as well as any other documents which are part of the application?
Yes.
Can you list those for us just generally, if you would?
Generally, I looked at the traffic report that was submitted and looked at the ITE trip generation data and looked at site distances and visited the site and visited the adjacent intersections to see how they operated.
Okay. How many occasions did you visit the site?
I'd say numerous occasions. I have relatives that live within a mile, and I had lived in Edison for years prior to years ago.
So you're familiar with the location, you're familiar with Inman Avenue?
I am familiar with it.
Okay. Now, prior to your coming here this evening, did you also examine the site plan that was prepared by Langen Engineering, which I presented before you this evening?
Yes, I looked at that as well.
And I earlier identified it, I think, when I put it on the easel as being the site plan in question.
Correct.
Now, do you recall my asking the prior witness, who was the traffic expert for the applicant, whether he was familiar with Inman Avenue.
Yes.
Now, prior to coming here this evening, did you review prior approvals for an earlier Tier 1 application as well as with regard to the adjacent property located to the east?
Yeah, I looked at the application before this.
Now, when you're looking at the site plan in question, does it also reflect the survey data as well as the footprint of the subject property?
Correct.
Now, taking your attention, if you would, first to the area located to the west of the subject property, that does in fact contain, if you might want to call it, a sister building for the proposed applicant, correct?
Yes.
Now, does that plan as shown on this survey reflect the fact that as a part of the application, the right-of-way of Inman Avenue was expanded to an area going to the west into the property of the applicant's adjacently owned property?
Correct, it was.
All right. Can you tell us approximately how far from the age of payment that right-of-way was expanded?
It appears to be 31. It appears to be 31 feet from, well, the expansion.
Just a rough guesstimate is good.
Approximately 20 feet.
Okay. That 20 feet would be from the northerly side of Inman Avenue, traveling in a northerly direction into the adjacent property, which is a part of this application as well, is it not?
Yes, that's travel west.
Okay. Now, going to the east of the subject property, and looking at the site plan which is there reflecting the adjacent properties, can you tell me whether or not that also provides for an expansion of the right-of-way of Inman Avenue going to the west?
No, it does not.
To the north, to the east of the applicant's property.
Microphone, please, Mr.
I'm sorry?
Gazarovski. Microphone, please, we can't hear you. You're taking the microphone, and you're going like this and talking, so we can't hear you.
I understand. Looking at the property which is located directly to the east where the residential homes are located, does that not also call for an expansion of the right-of-way?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
An expansion of approximately difficult to say, but it looks like that's 40 foot from the right-of-way.
Okay. Now, in looking at the subject property, which is the subject matter of this application, and more particularly looking at the westerly portion of the property, I want to draw your attention to the marks establishing the boundary lines of the application in question. It's not just property that is owned by the applicant, but it's property which is a part of the application utilized for various purposes, including floor area ratio, parking ratios, and the like. Now, does it not appear from the plan prepared by Langen Engineering that a part of the applicant's property is actually in the traveled way of Inman Avenue?
Yes.
And that would be on the westerly side of Inman Avenue, I'm sorry, on the northerly side of Inman Avenue and the southerly line of the applicant's property. Correct?
On the, going easterly on the property, it'd be on the northern portion of Inman Road as one goes to the east along that northern portion.
Now, Inman Avenue is in fact a county road, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And if you read, and have you read Mr. Bignew's review letter? Mr. Bignew's review letter with regard to all other necessary approvals.
Yes.
One of those approvals would be the
approval
approval
is the
from the
county
county
approval.
planning board, right?
Correct.
Now, did you also read the testimony of the applicant's traffic consultant?
Yes, the
Now-
traffic report.
Now, in looking at the proposed ingress and egress of the subject property, is there any provision in that area for the widening of Inman Avenue in a westerly direction?
No.
Have you reviewed the file concerning this application, and can you tell me whether or not you are aware of any application being filed with the county planning board seeking direction with regard to the proposed right-of-way of Inman Avenue?
I'm not aware of any, no.
Now, how long have you been working as a professional engineer as well as a traffic consultant in the state of New Jersey?
Over 30 years.
Okay. Are you aware of any situation where, since this property is located in between two properties that have made a road dedication for Inman Avenue, why it would not be required from the county for them to also give either an easement or a right-of-way to the county for the expansion of Inman Avenue?
No. When I was a county traffic engineer for Burlington County and the occurrence like that happened, the right-of-way was modified to the standards of the area, and the applicant's title to the land to the middle of the right-of-way or the middle of the roadway was vacated.
Okay. Now, did you read the prior testimony, I think it's Mr. Desario, concerning how he established his ratios for both parking, floor area ratio, and to determine the necessary ratios to satisfy the zoning ordinance of the Township of Edison?
Yes.
Okay. Now, prior to this expansion, he is still somewhat deficient with regard to satisfying the standards of the township, is he not?
Which standards?
With regard to parking ratios, density, and the like.
Well, basically, I have to take a look at that again.
Okay. Let's just talk about then the ingress and egress. Did the applicant's engineer and/or his traffic consultant give any consideration as to what the site distances would be if, in fact, a roadway of Inman Avenue were extended to in a northerly direction, and the driveway, of course, beginning further back?
Well, if the driveway was further back, the site triangle would be much further back as well.
So, but there's been no testimony nor any reports from the traffic consultant for the applicant either explaining that or giving what they would be if called upon by the county.
No, there's no discussion, and there's a significant amount of clearing that has to be done because of the differences in elevation, so you'd have to do it all by survey work to make sure that the site distance was adequate.
And none of that is in these plans which are presently before this board, is it? Or
I didn't see any that did site distances in that type of detail.
okay. Now, on the roadway itself, can you describe what the roadway looks like immediately in front of the proposed building?
Immediately in front of the proposed building, the roadway is wooded and there's a difference in elevation.
Is there any provision for a shoulder in front of the proposed
There's
building?
no provisions for shoulder, and there are no shoulders there now.
Any provision for either a deceleration or an acceleration lane?
No, there are not.
Now, what traffic observations did you make when you went out there?
Well, my observations were normally when you look at a traffic report or a traffic study for a site, you look at the site driveways and then the nearest intersections that are of significance in either direction. This traffic study looked at the site driveways and showed that there were good levels of service at the site driveways, but it didn't show the impact at the adjacent school at Tingley Lane and Inman or at Old Rollway Road in Tingley.
Did you make any observations as to that intersection?
Well, I did take some observations and took some photographs of the backups there. They're all basically the intersection of Tingley Lane and Inman Avenue are basically level service F with complete backups at the school when the school gets in and out. And it's always a problem at that intersection. But that intersection was not looked at. Neither was the intersection at Old Rollway Road and Tingley Lane and Inman Avenue. And actually, I guess Inman Avenue and Rollway Avenue, sort of like a combination double intersection, because both of them operate together. But when school gets out, it's very difficult for anybody to get through. They have a guard there directing traffic, but even with them directing traffic, it blocks the roadway so nobody gets through for a significant amount of time, probably 15 to 30 minutes.
Have you formed an opinion as to what impact, if any, this expansion of the facility would have upon those intersections if approved by the board?
Well, it would exasperate them both. They fail at the present moment, so there should be an improvement at that intersection, the intersection of basically of Inman, Rollway, and Tingley Lane.
Now, you're aware of the fact, are you not, that the subject property at present is zoned residential?
Yes.
Now, did you give any thought to what the difference is between the continued use of the property from a traffic perspective as a residential house or two residential houses as compared with the proposed application?
Well, one of the questions that comes to mind, if you're going to have a project that changes from one use to another, what would be the impact? Would it be more intense traffic-wise or less intense traffic-wise? So we use the ITE traffic generation data, which is normally used by everyone.
Would you please just, I know the board knows, but just what does ITE stand for?
Institute of Transportation Engineers, of which I am basically a life member.
And is this commonly a journal or whatever it may be, which is commonly used by traffic engineers?
Well, it's a organization that promotes good traffic and transportation planning and engineering, and it's used to produce documentation for trip generation analyses and other data for planning.
Okay.
It basically sets the guidelines for traffic engineering, planning engineering.
Did you do a comparison of what the existing two houses would have on this property as compared to the 160 new beds?
Well, the standard is using the book from ITE called Trip Generation. And what we did is we used those standards from Trip Generation to determine for two single-family homes how much traffic there would be. In the AM peak hour, that would be around 2 vehicles, 2 trips. In the PM peak hour, 2 trips, Saturday peak hour, 2 trips, and Saturday 24 hours, about 20 trips. If we put in 106 new beds, the traffic would go from, in the AM peak hour, from 9 times as great to 18. The PM peak hour would go from 2 to 31, Saturday peak hour would go from 2 to 38, and the Saturday 24 hours would go from 20 to 230. So we find that it sounds like you're not getting a lot of trips extra, but you're getting a tremendous drop in the percentage impact of the amount of traffic from the site. So you're getting basically 9 to 20 times the traffic, and significant over a couple hundred trips extra on a Saturday.
Okay. Now, obviously, the ITE selects studies from throughout the United States, does it not, in creating their comparisons?
It's good for all over the United States.
Yeah, and it's commonly accepted by both civil engineers as well as traffic consultants throughout
Correct.
the state of New Jersey. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Now, have you formed an opinion as to what impact, if any, the presence of this site, if approved, would have upon the traffic which is on Inman Avenue, as well as the intersections which you earlier referred to?
It would exasperate the situation that's bad at the school at the present time, and it's bad in peak hours at the present time, especially in Norway, Tingley, and Inman.
Now, let me ask you this. With regard to parking, did you make any observations as to what the present parking is, as well as the projected parking on, I'm going to use the word sites, because this approval deals with the existing location plus adding an additional 5 acres with this proposed new building?
I did look at the adjacent site to determine if the parking was adequate. I'm familiar with the site. I've been there and visited it before, and actually had family members stay there. And so I am quite familiar with it. And when I went out and looked at it, I found that there were tire tracks all around into the grass, and some indicating that people parked in the grass area. There were people illegally parked in the aisles, and there was a lot of grass. People who were parking on grass as well. The only vacant spots in the back were signed for doctors. And there were a couple of spots that were vacant. Otherwise, all the spots were taken, and there was a deficit of parking that you would say was probably 3 to 5 spaces because of the illegal parking that was going on.
Okay. Now, as a result of what those tests, not the tests, but as a result of the observations which you made, and I think you testified you went back there on more than one occasion, have you formed an opinion or formed a conclusion as to what impact this proposed facility would have upon the site itself as far as congestion, as well as the impact on Inman Avenue?
It would have an impact that would, basically what you have is a couple intersections that are maxed out and need improvement at a certain time because they're failing. So the only way to improve that is to make an improvement. So any additional traffic you put on, and especially like on a Saturday when you're adding an extra couple hundred trips, those type of added increases in traffic will create problems, especially at the two intersections, one on either side, both of which are overstressed now.
Well, let me go on further then. You're aware of the fact that at the present time, the property, which is the subject matter of this application, is zone residential, correct?
Correct.
And you're aware of the fact that at present, on the site itself, whether they're occupied or not, there are 2 residences on that property.
Correct.
And if the property were in fact developed pursuant to the zoning ordinance in the Township of Edison, there might be anywhere between perhaps 2 to 5 residential houses placed upon that property, if that many.
Maybe 2 to 4.
Okay. And are you aware of the fact that in the existing master plan of the Township of Edison, as well as any reexamination of the master plan, there is no recommendation in there for this property to be rezoned from residential to some type of a commercial use, such as the building in question, or even to a care facility, correct?
Yes.
What does that tell you?
That wasn't intended, that was not an intent of the governing body.
Okay. Now, you're aware of the fact, are you not, that Mr. Bignell has commented about an additional approval necessary from the county, correct?
Correct, that's required. It's on a
Okay.
county road.
Now, you're aware of the fact that the applicant need not necessarily apply for that county approval before coming before this board concerning an application such as this.
Correct.
Now, as a professional traffic consultant and engineer, is it in your mind prudent or wise to design a project without either acknowledging or applying for an approval from the county with regard to Inman Avenue, so that that question is resolved and presented to this board?
Well, if the normal prudent way to do it on a county as well as a state highway is to meet with the state or meet with the county engineer or a county planning board to determine what they would agree to or accept and put that into your plan, because otherwise you're just going to do the plan, have it approved by the board, then go to the county or state, and then come back and redo it again.
Okay. Now, as a traffic engineer, traffic consultant, is it your opinion that it would be prudent for a board such as this, being a local board filled with local citizens, that an answer to that question should be provided prior to any action being taken on this application?
It would have been prudent for him to have done that, yes. And as I recall, the Township of Edison had previously required a county approval on certain projects like this in the past.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Then your next witness. Okay. Does the board have any questions? This, do you? No, okay, not right, yes,
Forgot
okay.
this good look inside here.
Oh,
I
okay,
have a
this
question.
looking
Yeah.
sundown there? Okay, go ahead, Mr.
So you said
Palmer.
that you had visited the site and you had noticed that there was a parking shortage, that there were vehicles parked on the grass. Did you get any photographic evidence of that?
I couldn't completely hear you.
So you had stated prior that you had visited the site and you had noticed that there's a parking shortage, that there were vehicles parked on the grass. Did you get a photographic evidence of that so as to present to the board?
I don't know if I did or not. If I did, I will return them with them. I did take some photographs. I don't know if I photographed that or not.
Okay. All right.
The part that was alarming was the people that were backing out or coming right in and parking on the grass right directly from Inman Avenue.
Did you get photographic evidence of that?
I'll double check my files and see if I have any photographs. Okay. We did do some photographs of the site, the site vision from the driveway. We have those if you wanted to hand those out. Come on, do you want?
Anything else, Mr. Palmer? Okay. Any other questions of the board? No? Okay, Mr. Gazarovski, next. What? Did someone call me? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Your next witness?
Okay.
We're okay?
You're going to proceed until I complete my objective testimony, and then Ms. Aaron will have the opportunity after that to cross-examine Mr. Steck as well as Mr. Litwani.
I thought you had another witness this evening.
do.
Yeah, so we're going to...
That's the way you want to proceed.
No, we're going to have your case or your objector's case put on completely, and then at the next meeting, since we don't have any reports, and we did discuss this at the beginning, Ms. Aram will have an opportunity to cross-examine after you have finished the cross of Mr. Phillips.
Is that what Ms. Aram would, that's the way you prefer to do it? Is that correct?
As opposed to what?
Microphone,
I'm not opposed to
please, Ms.
anything.
Aram.
I've listened to what Ms. Shah has said. I don't have a problem with that. Is that what you wish to do? That's all.
As long as I have the time to to prepare cross, let's move it along.
Right, at the next meeting, if you're complete with both your witnesses, she'll do the cross after Mr. Phillips.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, let's...
And I would represent to the board that prior to that, I will have Mr. Litwani search his computer, and if he has those photographs, I will send them to the board attorney as well as to Ms. Aram. And then
That's
he can
fine.
be cross-examined with regard to those as well.
That's fine.
it's easy for the other part of the application to get lost in the shuffle, but just to remind the board, we do have also the application for the skilled facility where we are adding 15 spaces, and that meets the zoning requirement for that site. I just wanted to remind you of that.
Mr. Gazarovski, when he does search his computer, and if you do find any photographs, please make sure that the board secretary
I shall.
has them. Okay.
And I'll proceed, if you wish, at this time. I'll call Mr. Peter Steck.
No, wait a minute.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Skibar just decided. Yes,
Yeah.
Mr.
Well,
Skibar.
actually, I just want to clarify, we will get a copy of that that traffic report?
Well, no, there's no traffic report.
Well,
We're talking about copies
Will
of
he
the
provide-
pictures.
But is he planning on providing a traffic report?
I will provide within the next 3 days a copy of a traffic report, which I'll provide to the board as well as to Ms. Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I think that's fair to Ms. Aaron because she may want to cross-examine as to certain comments made in that report. I don't have a problem with that.
Great. Okay, moving along. Next witness, please.
Okay, next call, Mr. Peter Steck.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record.
Peter G. Steck, S-T-E-C-K.
Mr. Steck, can we have some qualifications, please, for the record?
Yes, by way of education, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master's in city and regional planning. I was licensed as a planner in 1976 and still hold that license. In terms of experience, I was the planning director for the Township of Montclair for just short of 10 years. I also was an associate planner with 2 consulting firms, Malcolm Kassler Associates and Alvin Gershon Associates. I've testified in approximately 200 municipalities in New Jersey and been accepted as an expert planning witness in those municipalities as well as in Superior Court and in tax court. And I also am on the League of Municipalities Land Use Law Drafting Committee.
Okay, fine. We'll accept the qualifications. And I assume you're here this evening as planner?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairlady. Mr. Steck, you were retained by me with regard to this matter, were you not?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that you are among one of several planners that I utilize from time to time to present expert testimony before a board such as this?
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, on several occasions, you have been retained by attorneys who are on the opposite side of the case which I am presenting to the board. Is that not so?
Yes.
Okay. Can you outline to the board what steps you took with regard to preparing yourself for the testimony this evening?
Yes.
And Madam Chairlady, oftentimes when I deal with Mr. Steck, I allow him to present his testimony rather than my interrupting him with questions which I think will speed the process along.
Great. Thank you.
I read the transcript of the hearing when Mr. Phillips testified. I was also at 2 prior hearings. I reviewed the application file for the subject application. I also looked at the prior application where the nursing home was expanded. I've been to the site at 3 times at various times during the day, and I've been present this evening to hear the testimony of Mr. Litwarnia.
Mr. Steck, before we get into the thrust of your testimony, you were present when Mr. Litwarnia commented with regard to the necessity of county planning board approval as well as the issue with regard to the expansion of the right-of-way.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts concerning that?
I do.
You give it to us.
Looking at the lot pattern in the area, as well as the 2000 file for the expansion of the nursing home, and looking at what is out there, the county requirements are a 100-foot wide right-of-way, and as you can see from the applicant's submission, the subject property does not accommodate anything close to the 100-foot right-of-way that is on the county master plan. In fact, the most easterly lot, the front line of that lot is actually in the paved surface of Inman Avenue. So if you look at the 2000 approval where the right-of-way was expanded as part of that application, if you look at the cul-de-sac to the east, you see that the right-of-way is all of a sudden expanded, and you would expect that as a condition of those approvals, the county would require that there be a dedication of land in order to accommodate county purposes. It is clear from this application, first of all, because the property line runs into the pavement of Inman Avenue, that the county is going to require some kind of dedication. Each of the 3 lots that are proposed for expansion, in my opinion, will require some dedication of land to the county as a condition of this. It is not insignificant. It's not that they're going to require, in my opinion, 2 feet or 3 feet or 4 feet. They're going to require a significant amount of land, potentially 20 feet. The site plan that is proposed by the applicant does not take any of this into account in several fashions. Number one, the driveway exit is in an area which, in my opinion, is likely to be required to be dedicated as part of a widened right-of-way. So that's going to have to be pushed back. As I read the plan, this dedication of land is going to reduce the square footage of the lots, as well as the setback to the parking in front, as well as the setback to the building. The calculations on the plan in terms of floor area ratio, building coverage, front setback, they're all going to be increased in terms of their nonconformities because of this dedication. Now, we don't know exactly how much land the county is going to require, but it is clear that they're going to require a significant amount of land, in my opinion, and that's going to increase the floor area ratio, different from what appeared on the public notice. It's going to increase the building coverage. It's going to bring the parking closer, and it's going to bring the stop bar for the cars exiting this property further into the property. So no one knows at the moment what the real site distance is likely to be, because it's in my opinion, inadequate to assume that the county is not going to require any land. The parallel I make is, let's assume for the moment there were wetlands on the site, and that's another point we'll talk about. While you can't require the applicant to require a letter of interpretation in advance, if there are wetlands on the site, you would expect that applicant to send its professionals out there and delineate the wetlands so you'll have a good idea of what the state is going to require and how it's going to affect the plan. The applicant here has acknowledged that it's going to require county review, but has made no effort to find out approximately what that dedication is going to be. And that's a fundamental issue, because one of the issues on this application is the site distance, because if the board members are familiar, this is a very sharp turn in front of the property. And in fact, when I was out there taking photographs, the guardrail was being repaired, presumably because of some accident in this area. So it's a very dangerous area. The other issue that is similar is that if you look at the 2000 site plan where the nursing home was expanded last, that plan showed wetlands on the northwest corner. It showed the delineation of wetlands. It showed a buffer area. These plans don't show that at all. Now, those wetlands didn't disappear because they were established by some restriction. On that approval, they needed DEP approval to get the wetlands established. The other interesting thing is if you look at the NJDEP Geo website, they have an approximation, not official, but approximation of where wetlands are. And that map shows wetlands arching around the back of the existing nursing home and into the area that the applicant is proposing to regrade. Now, that's a fundamental issue. If those wetlands are really there, this application can't be built. What is amazing is that the prior plan that is before this board in 2000 showed wetlands there. So we know they're on the site. The applicant, in my opinion, is required to show those wetlands, but there's nothing present on the plan that demonstrates that, which is a major significant. Now, the applicant kind of, in proposing additional parking for the nursing home, didn't expand into that area. And the reason why, in my opinion, is there are wetlands there, but they're not shown on the map. That's a fundamental issue. And there's some evidence, at least on the state DEP website, that they extend arch around the back of the nursing home toward where this new project is being proposed. One of the issues is the scale of this building. And first of all, I would admit that it's an inherently beneficial use. But this is a very large building in a zone that permits only single-family use. If you look at your master plan, while the master plan land use plan indicates that the existing nursing home is not a single-family use, the 3 lots that we're talking about for expansion in the master plan are recommended for single-family use. So here's the master plan saying, we know the nursing home is there, but our recommended policy is to continue single-family use on the 3 properties to the east. This building is large. If you read the record, the resolution for the 2000 expansion, there was attention given to the fact that it's only 1 or 2 stories, and as you know from driving the area, it's a building with a relatively low profile. This building will have a big profile. There happens to be a courtyard in the middle, but of course anybody around the perimeter doesn't know there's a courtyard there. This is a fairly substantial building, and it is fairly substantial in height in the front. The other issue is not only is the county, in my opinion, going to require additional land, but that's going to trigger different grading, because as you know from this property, it slopes up from the roadway now. So the grading plan that's proposed, if the county it requires some kind of dedication, is clearly not going to be the grading plan that would be here at the end of the day. This building is also higher than the lots to the east on the cul-de-sac. So while there, if you look at the sight lines that were shown, the sight lines tended to go across the tip of the trees that were proposed in the buffer. Well, as you know, the tips of the trees are not going to be a continuous line of blockage. There are going to be a few trees there, but you're going to see in between the trees. So that not only is this a big building, a bulky building, and as already on the testimony, there are other assisted living facilities that aren't as tall as this, that are not as massive, not as tall as this, that are already in the municipality and owned by, also produced by Care One. This is a big building. It is clearly incompatible in terms of its bulk with a single-family neighborhood. The incompatibility of it is accentuated by the fact that it is so tall. The applicant is only partially grading this. Presumably you could, dig it into the ground. There might be wetland purposes there that might prohibit the applicant for doing this. We don't know that. But the answer, it is a tall building in terms of stories. It is massive in terms of its exterior dimensions, and it is up higher than you would normally expect it to be. And I don't know the reason why. It may be saving expenses. It may be that there are water table issues there. We don't know, but the state DEP website does show that there may be wetlands in the back. And that's a fundamental issue because it really means that if that's the case, and if these are, connected to other wetlands that have already been established in the northwest part of the property, the applicant isn't going to be able to fill them. So it's a fundamental issue. It's an issue that has not been addressed by the applicant. And what is amazing is it was shown on the 2000 site plan that was approved when the nursing home expanded, and all of a sudden they seem to have disappeared. So this is a SECA case. It's the four-step process. You're to judge what is the public benefit that arises from the very nature of the project. You're to say, are there any reasonable conditions that can be imposed that would lessen, the second point is, what are the detriments from this? And they're clearly visual detriments, they're safety issues with the sharp turn on the front. There are potential issues of environmental concern because of wetlands. There are issues of noise in terms of the generator and rooftop HVAC units. It is clearly out of character with a single-family use, and it is clearly not a use that's recommended in the master plan. So the first step is, what's the magnitude of the public benefit? Number two, what are the negative impacts that arise from this? Number three is, what reasonable conditions can be imposed that might lessen those impacts? And then the final judgment the board is to make is, on balance, whether this application can be approved and still meet the negative criteria. There is a weighing function to this. In my opinion, this building, it might meet the business model of Care One, but it doesn't meet the constraints of the site. It is too big for the site. It is too close to the surrounding residents. The applicant is saying, well, look, we meet the standards of this zone, this single-family zone. That doesn't answer the question. As planners, when they testify, they say, where you have a use that's not permitted, they say that the dimensional standards are subsumed into the use variance. That doesn't mean that the dimensional standards disappear. That may mean that the dimensional standards that are associated, that were designed for single-family houses, are not appropriate for a building this size. Perhaps you need, and I would say you do need, greater setbacks, less building coverage, and the like. When the 2000 expansion was done, there was a lot of discussion about adding landscaping, making sure the building was not too tall. This violates those concerns. Not only does it extend it in an area that the master plan said should not be extended, but this is a building that is, again, large. It has a generator and refuse on the most sensitive side, the side to the east that abuts people's backyards. The applicant initially was trying to rely on landscaping that was on our client's property rather than planting it. Another fundamental issue is it's the burden of the applicant to demonstrate that this needs to be approved. And in my opinion, there are glaring items that are missing. Wetlands, grading of the driveways, setback in the front, site distances. Those are left floating in the air, and it is obvious to me that the county is going to require some significant dedication. It would seem wise, as Mr. Litvornia said, to meet with the county and get an idea of how much land they want, because it's going to require a redesign of the site. It's going to push the stop bar back. It's going to change the grading. That area in the front, by the way, is where the detention system is. I don't know if that can be accommodated once the right-of-way is granted and the area is regraded. There are too many questions that, in my opinion, do not provide evidence that this board can conclude that the SECA criteria have been satisfied. Again, the applicant has potentially a leg up because this is an inherently beneficial use, but the size of the building is due to the applicant's business model. There are other assisted living facilities that are not as large. There are other ones that don't have the same number of stories. So it is generically possible to make a smaller building that fits this site. There are too many things missing, and again, it was amazing to me that there were wetlands on the site and all of a sudden they're not referenced anymore. That's a fundamental issue. That should be an issue that the applicant addresses walking in the door. It's somehow mysteriously missing from the plans. Those are fundamental weaknesses that, in my opinion, allow this board to say the applicant hasn't met the burden of proof, even under the SECA criteria, and this application cannot be approved as presented.
Just briefly, you make reference to the fact that, I guess hypothetically, the county could in fact require an expansion of the right-of-way, which would go on to the applicant's property, correct?
Yes.
Now, we know that for the purposes of this board, he doesn't have to show that on this particular plan, but of course, Mr. Bignell references the need for those ancillary approvals, one of course being the county.
That's correct.
Now, the applicant is seeking a use variance.
Yes.
And one of the arguments, of course, is to show satisfaction concerning the negative criteria as far as the impact that it would have upon adjacent property owners.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be a simple process for the applicant to also present to this board as a part of what it could consider what the plan would look like if, in fact, the roadway were expanded?
It's not only simple, I think it's essential to do. Again, if there are wetlands on the property, an applicant should have them delineated, not necessarily by the state, but by a professional. In this case, in the past, they were already delineated, but somehow they're not on the site. So the answer is, it is good for everybody. Why waste the board's time when you know that there's going to be a substantial change here? The applicant can't, in my opinion, cannot rely on the site distance diagram, because, in my opinion, the county is not going to let these properties extend onto the pavement. They're going to require dedication, and that changes the nature of the variances. You now have parking within the front setback. You now have a greater building coverage. You now have a greater floor area ratio. Those are not addressed by the applicant, and they're not addressed in the public notice.
So if in fact the county were to require these, and obviously the board will seek guidance from its professionals, and I know the board has been concerned about the length of this application, this could become a do-over, would it not?
Yes, it would.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Does the board have any questions? Yes, Mr. Skiba.
Could you just briefly explain, I guess, provided that there are wetlands there, what's the impact that has on this application, very simply?
Again, the prior application showed that there were wetlands in the northwest corner, and first of all, from your submission requirement point of view, you got to show them. There were wetlands and there was buffer averaging at that time. The NJDEP website has an overlay that shows potential wetlands, and again, not official. They might not be there to that extent, but they showed the wetlands wrapping around the back of the nursing home and extending onto the part of this site that is proposed to be disturbed by parking and buildings. If those are in fact wetlands and cannot be filled, the applicant cannot build this plan. It will take a section out of it in the northwestern area, and that's not something obviously that this board can give relief to. That's the state operating it. The applicant may be able to, if the wetlands are there, the applicant may be able to do some transition area buffer averaging, but that only goes down to 25 feet. And the real problem is the state suggests that there are wetlands back there. It is clear that the applicant hasn't even gotten to base one because the prior plan that was submitted by, I forget the different engineering firm, Menlo Associates, did show wetlands there. And once you have established wetlands, you typically establish them by way of easement, so they're on some recorded document, and they were on the prior plans. Why aren't they here today? So those wetlands, if present, will result in the fact that this project cannot be built, at least at this scale and at this far back.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the board? Yes, Mr.
I'd like to
Taglenetti.
explore that a little more. So let's say there are wetlands there, and when the applicant goes to submit this to the county or wherever they submit it to, find out there's wetlands, and they say you can't build this building the way you have it here. I mean, what have they gained for this last 2 years here by not doing that, by not addressing the wetlands?
Well, in my opinion, they've wasted all of our time. In my opinion, they should have had a professional out there to determine whether or not the wetlands are larger than already established. And it is such a fundamental issue that it's a waste of everyone's time, in my opinion, to just as it is to produce a plan that assumes the county is going to let your property going to the center of the road. That's, in my opinion, that's not going to happen.
Any other questions of the board? No. Okay, are you done this evening, Mr. Garadowski? I think so.
Let me just make one. Okay, considering that this matter will continue, I just want to confirm that all experts will be available on October 29th for cross-examination, you'll have all your experts, Ms. Aram? Because you have to continue with Mr. Phillips. Mr. Gazarovski is going to continue with Mr. Phillips.
Yes, they'll be here, but my understanding is that cross-examination is complete of my witnesses once Mr. Gazarovski finishes cross of my planner.
Correct. And then after that, you will be cross-examining Mr. Gazarovski's two experts. I want to confirm everybody will be here, considering the length of this application. Is that correct, Mr. Gazarovski?
I have no problem, and I would think, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but at the end of the day, after hearing all of the testimony, I think the board may have questions of some of my colleagues' prior witnesses. But however the board wants to do it, it's fine
And the
with me.
board will do what the board needs to do, but my
Right.
question is, I want to make sure that on October 29th, all experts are available so that we can hopefully conclude that portion of testimony and cross-examination, potential rebuttal, and then hopefully proceed to address the public. I don't know how far we'll get, but I'd like to, I think, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how far we get. I mean, in the best of all worlds, I would like to have all the public input in one night. So we're just going to have to see how long it's going to take us to get through what Ms. Shaw just enumerated for us. Because it really doesn't make much sense to start the public and then have to have you come back again. But I would really, really, really like everybody to be here and really want to get this
Okay.
tightened up and out to the public, and from there, do what we have to. Yes, Mr.
Ms. Shaw, I spoke earlier with the board attorney and my colleague as well. I've concluded my case, but I still reserve the right pursuant to our earlier conversation to produce to the board attorney the documents that we've spoken of for the board attorney to treat them as she wishes.
Well, they're not for my treatment.
Pardon?
This is not for my treatment. I'm going to allow Ms. Aram to respond, and if you'd like to present them now so the board has the document to review and provide it to our secretary, she'll disseminate it to the board. The board can consider it, and Ms. Aram can respond and provide a response by the next meeting. I don't want to hold it up. If you have it, let's move it forward.
I can respond now if he has it, if he wants to.
But the board has not had an opportunity to review it because it has to be.
I understand, but I'm prepared
right.
to keep moving.
Okay, so I would rather, if you'd want to provide it to the board, then let's do that now. And you can provide it to the board secretary, she can disseminate it, and we'll have Ms. Aram respond to it before we leave tonight.
Yeah.
They're all going to be back. Okay, yeah. Yeah, if you can do it now, right.
While we're waiting, we know we'll go beyond the 29th, I believe. Is there a date in November?
I'm really hopeful we don't.
Hopeful we're not. We're really hopeful we're not.
We're not going beyond
I have
the
a feeling
29th.
we will.
Okay, while we're doing this, as Mr. Talganetti said, we might as well use the time. He had asked some questions, I think of some of your experts, and he has not gotten the answers. So let him ask them again, and if we can get them answered tonight, fine. And if we can't, at least you can come back at the next meeting with the answers.
Yes.
Is Mr. Palmerico here?
The architect, yes.
Yes, may I ask him a question, wherever he is?
Okay, we're not in any kind of recess.
Mr. Palmerico, just for the record, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Taglenetti, go ahead.
Just one question. Several meetings ago, the question was asked relative to the height of the parapet roof line at 47 feet, and it was said that it was at that particular height and approximately 8 feet off the roof, I believe, because of the height of the rooftop units. And you were supposed to get back to us and tell us how high those rooftop units were and how much you could contract that parapet height to bring the roof down from 47 feet, which in fact is, plus 16 feet when you're on the eastern property.
Okay. Would it be benefit? Okay. What I would like to do, since we're going to be coming back for another meeting, I'd like to pull the exact specifications of the unit, and I could probably create a diagram to better demonstrate to you how to respond to your question.
That would be great. If I'm not happen to.
Because
be
instead
there,
of trying to
please
describe it
respond.
verbally, I can just do a diagram, a graphic.
I understand that you can do a diagram and show me a 3-foot-high condenser and an 8-foot-high.
I want to
but tell
confirm
us
the
why.
specification on the air handler unit and confirm the exact height. I'd prefer to give you specifics instead of generalize it.
And again, if I'm not here, please present it to me.
Absolutely.
Then I had another question for the acoustical engineer. Is he here?
Yes.
Sir, just again for the record, raise your right hand, solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I just need clarification. The generator was 1,000 megawatts?
Kilowatts.
Kilowatts. And what was the dBA on that?
The specification or the sound level at the property line, sir?
specifications and the sound level?
It is 3 meters, or 23 feet from the unit. It'll be 65 dBA.
And at that 65 dBA, that's based on ASHRAE or the unit?
That's it's based upon the manufacturer's tested level of this actual unit.
And will it be enclosed to reduce the sound?
Yes, it is an enclosure, an acoustical enclosure.
That's a 65 dBA?
Correct, sir.
Okay. And that 65 dBA, is that going to have any effect on the residents that live above it?
The result of that will have a sound level of 57 dBA at the nearest residential property line to the east, which is below the code.
I'm not talking about the residents to the east, I'm talking about the residents in the building.
Above it, yeah. Well, that sound level is in all directions, so 65 dBA, 23 feet, up, out, left, and right.
Will the applicant increase the STC rating of the windows on those elevations close to the generator?
We haven't discussed that yet.
Can you please find out?
I certainly will.
Okay. Typical STC rating for windows 28,
30,
32?
30 to 35.
Okay. Typical 30?
No, those are standard double glazed, double hung windows, yes.
Typically, I buy them all day long, they're 27.
Okay, well,
Okay, so
we buy better
30
windows.
If you want to do a 35, that's terrific.
I will discuss that with them.
Thank you. Same thing, if I'm not here, please.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else, Mr. Tagliani? Okay, Mr. Bendy?
I have a question. Have you done tests to find out where the water table is in this location?
I'm sorry?
Water table. Where is the water table? Where's the groundwater?
Table?
Yes.
We don't know that.
So no geotech.
Sarah, the
Yes, the
microphone, please.
Yes.
So no geotechnical investigations have been done at the site so far?
This would not be the time to do them. We would do that later on before construction.
Okay.
As long as we have the time, any other questions, so we can move hopefully forward to conclusion next meeting?
But if we don't, what would be the November date?
At this point, I don't know. Do you know, Cassandra, at all?
Well, let me show you the agenda.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Aram?
Yes.
Right now, we're looking at December 17th. That's how far out we're going because of our schedule. And
Okay.
I don't know, that's why we're really hoping it gets done in October, because this really has gone on and on and on. And as I say, the public has really been very, very patient, so has the board. So we're just hoping that this all gets done on the 29th. At this point, okay. At this point, we're not, that's the only application we have on the 29th, correct? So far, yeah.
We may have a residential or two, but it will not
So
take
you'll have
long, so you'll
almost
have the night.
the night. So we're hoping within an hour, hour and a half, you guys will be finished and we can go to the public.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Bignell?
if I may interrupt, they're going to assure us that all their experts are here that
I was
night?
just going to say, yeah.
I've already confirmed with everyone the other day that they can be here.
But, Madam Chair,
Yes,
with
Mr.
all due
Calvo.
respect, we were told when we scheduled tonight that all the professionals were going to be here, which is why we scheduled for tonight.
No,
With all
we
due
knew-
respect,
we knew about Mr. Phillips. I did. We did know.
I apologize for any
But with the-
misunderstanding.
Having to do with Mount Laurel issues. I know we had discussed that.
The public has been amazingly patient, and we want to give them their opportunity.
Yes, I appreciate that. We have all. We've all endured
We want to give them
this.
the opportunity to let their case be heard.
We do too, but we have to I would have finished a lot sooner. This is not something that I want. Trust me.
Okay, so having said all that, we need the letter.
Do you have the letter, Mr.
Have the letter,
Gazarovski?
and we need your response. We might as well get that done this evening. So
Let
that's
the
one
record
less thing
reflect
next
what I have.
time around.
I have a copy of a chain of title for the subject properties. I have earlier given to the board attorney, as well as to my colleague, a copy of the deed in question.
Mr. Gazarovski, are you presenting your letter this evening? Because I thought you were presenting the letter to the board.
The letter which I sent to you, Ms. Shaw?
Yes, are you presenting that letter to?
I have
do
a
you
copy. I have a
copies?
copy of that as well.
You have one copy. Why don't,
While we have the time, and because of the fact that we want to try and get this done next meeting, why don't we take a 5-minute break, and Cassandra will go up and make copies for the board so we can read it, so Ms. Aram can address it tonight, so that's one less thing next
Let me
meeting.
just make this one statement. I do have a copy of the chain of title. I think the only appropriate document is the letter with the enclosure that has the deed in question, so.
Can I make a suggestion? Because, it's okay, I have this. Because the letter does have some title attached, you're going to want to look at that, and you're not going to do that tonight. No, they're not going to look at it tonight. There's a lot of material there.
I think the best thing to do is if you could make sure that Cassandra has that letter so she can disseminate it to the board before our next meeting, and that Ms. Aram, if you want to respond to it, let's have that timely so that we can have that disseminated to the board, and if the board has any questions, that can be asked.
Let me do this.
Keep things moving.
I will do that before the end of the week, but I will have delivered to the board attorney, let's say, 12 copies of the package. So that
I don't need 12, you're going to deliver that to Cassandra.
She disseminates to the board, correct.
And then upon this being resolved, they'll be distributed or not distributed, depending upon what the board attorney rules.
It's not a decision that I will rule on, because there is set a law, and I have yet to hear Ms. Aram on the issue. Okay. So I think we're going to allow both of you time to speak on that topic, and then the board can take that into consideration.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I guess that's that for this evening for this case. And I have to thank everyone this evening, and I have to thank the public for being so patient. We're coming down to the end, guys. That's all I can say. Cassandra, is there anything else? Are there any resolutions tonight? Okay. Is that working?
Yep, it's working now. There's one resolution to be adopted. It's case number Z21, 2019, Sachin Patel, and it's granted.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
And?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. See you next week.